award-winning website and the League of Women Voters of Appleton website. It is also being live streamed on Facebook. We ask all those watching this forum to refrain from making any partisan comments on the League of Women Voters Facebook page. Any partisan comments will be deleted to conform with the League of Women Voters nonpartisan policy. Any questions sent to the League's email will be sent to the candidates and their answers will be added to the candidate voter guide. The League of Women Voters of Appleton owns the copyright to any audio or visual recording to these events. Unauthorized videotaping falls under the rules of the FCC, which requires that a forum must not be edited and must be broadcast in its entirety, either live or reasonably soon after it takes place. In addition, the League of Women Voters of Appleton candidate forums must not be referenced as a source in any campaign materials. While there is not a sign language interpreter, there will be closed captioning available on the YouTube video, which will be available through the League of Women Voters website. And YouTube videos are also available in several languages. Prior to tonight's forum, residents were invited to submit questions to the League email. Some of those questions will be heard tonight. These questions have been sorted before they were sent forward. This was not to eliminate questions, but rather to group them into like categories so that we have the opportunity to ask as many questions as needed to cover a variety of topics. We have a timekeeper. The League has always found this process to be a good means to keep us on track and moving along. It is not meant to cut people off or diminish the importance of response, but simply to use our time wisely. We trust that our local Appleton candidates will respect these constraints. And finally, we would like to acknowledge the candidates from District 1, candidate William Siebers and candidate Wendy Bohm. We are all grateful and thank them for their willingness to run for office and serve their community. Jacqueline Klimaszewski is Director of Voter Service for the League of Women Voters. Jacqueline has planned and organized this forum. She will be presenting the questions to the candidates. Jacqueline?
Thank you, Jean. Let me add my gratitude to the candidates for your time this evening to share your viewpoints with our voters. And I want to thank all of you listening to this for caring enough to be informed when you cast your votes in the election on April 6th. I have the pleasure to moderate the forum this evening. I have questions as Jean described, and all the questions submitted, asked and unasked, will be sent electronically to the candidates after the forum. Their written responses will be on the League website for you to view and use when deciding your vote. For the first two questions, the candidates will have 2 minutes to respond. And Julie is our timer, as you can see up on the screen. The remaining questions will be 1.5 minutes, and that is so we can, the goal here is to get in 15 questions by the end of the our time that we have. We will alternate which candidate replies to the question, so they both have a chance to be first and last. And we are starting with candidate Siebers and then going to candidate Bohm. That is to reflect their order on the ballot. That's how we chose who was going to start. So if we could start now with candidate Siebers, introduce yourself and explain why you are running for alderperson for District 1.
Okay, well, my name is Bill Siebers. I was born and raised in the city of Appleton, except for those years I was off to college, and shortly thereafter, I have lived in District 1 all my life. In fact, I live in the same neighborhood that I was raised in. I suspect that most of us, if not all of us, want to make a difference. And being on the city council is definitely an opportunity to make a difference, at times in big ways. But for me, it's the smaller ways, the more numerous ways the one-on-one contact with the constituents of District 1 in addressing problems, concerns that really make a significance for me in regards to making a difference. So it is my desire to continue to make a difference, not only for the city of Appleton, not only for the district, but for the individual lives in our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Baum.
So I'd like to say thank you to the League of Women Voters for providing these forums. As a voter, I've used them and the candidate guides to make my own decisions on voting. And so I'm the Chief Operations Officer of a software company that's based out of Appleton, and I work and live in District 1. In addition to working in technology in the past, I worked as a political reporter in Florida, covering small town political beats. So I do have a background of communicating complex issues to constituents in like a succinct and a succinct and direct manner. And the reason that I'm running, I think the number one reason is that in the past, on some of the city and its representative social media sites, I felt like communications with constituents hasn't always been professional or treated constituents with respect and dignity. And I feel like my background really would give me not a platform, but just experience in communicating with constituents and increasing the channels in which the district communicates things like when the snowplows are coming and when holidays are gonna interrupt, trash can pickup, and just the everyday issues that people within the district really care about. And I just appreciate the time today to get my voice heard and let people know about my candidacy. So thank you.
Thank you. So far and away, when we call for questions to the community, the most questions were about the library. So this next question, you will have 2 minutes because I want you to talk about the library. What's your vision? What role should the library play in our community? And do you support Mayor Woodford's plan to renovate or replace the library building at its current location? We'll start with Candidate Baum and go to Candidate Siebers.
So I have a very strong personal relationship with the library. When I was a child, I lived in the Upper Peninsula and we didn't have a library. We had a bookmobile that came through our town, and that I think was probably the bright point of my week. But really, studies have shown that libraries are essential to communities as economic drivers. Towns with strong libraries have lower crime rates. They give high school students a place to go after school. They give students a place to study and be tutored. They give nonprofits and social good organizations spaces to meet. They support the local arts. There are just so many reasons to support the library. But I think especially now with the pandemic, it's important for us to build back our economy stronger than it was before. The library is going to provide an essential service for that. They have an entrepreneurship that they launched over, I think, in the last few months, where entrepreneurs can access services now online, but they just have thought of sort of beefing that program up. It's really in its infancy. People get tax forms at the library. They use computers. They use copy services. I think that this is a good start, but the library is really at least 5 years overdue in the project being jump-started. I'd actually like to see this go further. So I would support the library project in the mayor's budget as it is, just to move forward, but really I'd like to see more being done. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Siebers.
All right. Since 2015, when the issue of the library really came to a head, when we were discussing the location on the Bluff site, I learned a lot about what a library is. For me, before, a library was books and periodicals and videos and what have you. But today, the library is much more than that. It's a meeting place. It has programs. It's a center for the community, and it's not just for one income bracket. It's for everybody. I want to tease you a little bit. I think tomorrow, the mayor is going to make an announcement in regards to the library. I think that should excite people. I feel very, very confident that our progress forward is going to happen this time.
Thank you. You that is an interesting teaser there, Mr. We'll start with candidate Siebers for the next question, and then candidate Baum. If elected, will you support municipal efforts to prevent the further spread of COVID-19 under existing laws as supported by the League of Wisconsin Municipalities?
I will definitely do that. I know there's big questions in regards to whether we should really need to wear a mask, or if there's really a threat. I don't understand those questions. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have any questions whatsoever in regards to wearing a mask. It doesn't do me any harm, and so I definitely support the state mandates, and I will abide by them.
Okay. And candidate Baum?
So I definitely support the furtherance of COVID-19 guidance from the city and from the state. As a person that runs a small business, I have felt like more guidance would have been nice for me, just because things have been kind of tumultuous with having guidance and then having it struck down and having the city start its own guidance. And my priority is to keep our employees safe and make sure that anyone who were to visit our office is safe. I also am on the board of a co-working space. So these guidelines are always on the top of my mind, but I feel like having clear guidance helps people know what to do. And I just feel like personally, my aunt is 80 and lives in the Upper Peninsula, and I would like to visit her someday. So I know that a lot of us are, I don't know if frustrated is the right word, but just have personal connections to people that we haven't necessarily been able to visit in a long time, and are really chomping at the bits, especially with the numbers going down. But I'd like to see guidance continue to be clear and to the point, and to let people know what we should be doing to make the numbers continue to go in the right direction.
Thank you. We will start with candidate Baum for question 4 and then go to candidate Siebers. It's about housing. Will you support ordinances and/or other measures, including updating the comprehensive plan to ensure affordable housing in Appleton?
I definitely support affordable housing in Appleton, and I think that the city needs some innovative ideas on how to address affordable housing. I know that because I've lived in other cities, New Orleans is in some ways a leader in like grant and loan programs to help actually developers rehab existing buildings with requirements for those units to go towards affordable housing for a certain period of time. That's definitely sparked an influx of business owners like landlords who were willing to rent to people who needed affordable housing. But from just a business person standpoint, knowing that young professionals can afford to live in Appleton is very important. I have friends who go to my church who are seniors who are getting priced out of housing in Appleton and just aren't quite sure what to do. People who've lived in Appleton their whole lives. So we really need to make sure that housing is affordable and accessible to all people. And that will be a priority for me if elected as alderperson.
Thank you. Candidate Siebers?
Yes, I think affordable housing is one of the positives, one of the draws for our district. And you know, I feel really, really strong about that. I also feel strong in regards to the maintenance of the housing stock. I think we can do more in terms of supporting you know, the improvement of our housing stock, especially encouraging people of lower income to use block grant funds. So I feel really good about where we stand in regards to affordable housing, but we can do more.
Okay, thank you. And we'll start with you, Candidate Siebers, for this next question, and then go to Candidate Baum. This continues on with the housing issue. And it deals with how can the city ensure affordable housing in available downtown so that people can shop and walk to work without the use of a vehicle. The questioner indicates that many affordable homes have been demolished over the past few years around the Y and other areas. So how can the city control tearing down affordable housing, and should there be a requirement to replace affordable housing when it is demolished?
Well, I have a different viewpoint than what you just stated. I remember in 2015, when I was running for office and I was circulating my pamphlets throughout the district, and I noted that there was a lot of empty houses, and I thought to myself, you know, there shouldn't be any reason for anybody not having a place to live, because there were just so many places that I saw were empty. And that's been one of the things that I've tried to do. I don't know why homeowners or property owners that have these homes that don't rent them out or don't sell them, why they leave them vacant. But that's been a challenge, and you know, we got to do more in regards to making sure that empty houses are filled with families.
Okay. Candidate Bob?
So I think that one of the important aspects of living downtown is just the livability of downtown. You can easily walk to the library and a lot of different stores and establishments. I think that I'd like to see walkability extend even out of downtown and farther north into like sort of the upper reaches of District 1. But specifically for downtown, I'd like to see more developers adding affordable housing units to developments that they're putting in downtown. It also, like I was mentioning before, for like when we have vacant properties downtown, sometimes it's because people see them as investments and they're holding out on them until they can sell at a higher price. So that's one reason for having vacant houses in the area. But like I was mentioning before, offering like very low interest loans or grants to property owners to fix up their houses and then turn them into rentals is one way to add affordable housing to different areas of the city, because it gives people who are trying to create an investment in the city an incentive to turn that property over into something that will benefit the city as a whole.
Okay. For the next question, we'll start with Candidate Baum and then do Candidate Siebers. What are your thoughts for dealing with racial disparity in opportunities, and particularly in housing and in our policing?
So I think that I've heard quite a few times in forums like these, but also in different areas of the city and at different networking events and things that I've gone to, that Appleton doesn't have a racism problem. And I feel like people who see that aren't listening to the people who are affected the most by racism. I've heard Lawrence students mention that they're worried about walking downtown because businesses might discriminate against them. And I've heard people in Appleton just like feel like that policing could be better. I'd like to see more community positions. I know that the police department has added those, more like victim advocacy professionals. I do think that Appleton is one of the best communities that I've lived in when it comes to the police department showing dignity and respect to its residents. Also with housing, like I was saying before, we just need more affordable housing that's accessible to people who would be moving here and able to afford different price points. And I feel like the Office of Diversity and Inclusion is very important because it sets the tone for the city and offers important education.
Candidate Siebers? Candidate Siebers, you are on mute.
Okay, now can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
All right, my apologies.
Happens.
One thing I feel really good about District 1 is I think our district is the most diverse district in the city of Appleton. And I sincerely hope that continues. I am really encouraged by our police department in regards to, wanting to be a better police department in regards to in the Black Lives Matter. They did a survey not too long ago, and it was stated that the Black people, about 15% of them felt uncomfortable with the police. And I know our chief is doing his very, very best to address that issue. In regards to any discrimination in regards to housing, we do have federal laws, protecting people against that.
Done. Okay, we will start the next question with candidate Siebers. Local taxes for property owners have increased over 22% in the past 5 years, during which time the cost of living has increased 8.7% and Social Security 8.1%. Appleton taxes, when combined with school taxes, comprise 80% of our property taxes. What would you do to ease this trajectory?
Well, I'm afraid, well, first of all, we do have a cap. The state has put a cap in regards to how much we can raise taxes. So there is a cap there. One of the problems that we're going to be experiencing in the very near, well, we're already experiencing it. We do have shared revenue from the state, and that keeps declining. It seems every year. So we're at a tough situation right now, and what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to learn how to set priorities, and that's going to be really, really tough. But the other option is going to a referendum and asking for additional funds from the taxpayers, but I don't think that would be very popular.
Okay. Candidate Baum?
So I know that with the current economy, things are tough for everyone. But I feel like in order to pay for vital city services, we need to pay common sense taxes to keep up our roads and city services like the library. As someone who runs a business, I know what it's like to need to invest wisely in areas that are going to grow for, in the business sense, like the quality of life for our employees, the quality of services for our clients. But from a city perspective, we need to make sure that we don't dig ourselves into an austerity budget that would cut services to the city so that we're not attracting businesses here, we're not attracting young professionals and young families and diverse peoples. So my worry is always that we would just dig ourselves into a spiral where we just stopped being the great place that Appleton is now. But I do think that we need innovative solutions. I think we need to look at like the current fees that we charge and parking and how that is funded and the projects that we're working on. And we're going to have to make hard decisions in the future.
Okay. We'll start with candidate Baum for this next one and then go to candidate Siebers. Will you support increased, accessible, and affordable public transportation within our Appleton community and link that transportation to other communities?
So I've had people comment to me that they don't see people using the public transportation, so it's not needed. However, I know of at least one family in the district that was just mentioning that they have one car, and it sure would be nice if the wife could take the bus to get groceries. I think one of the reasons why we don't have huge lines of people using public transportation right now is that the routes just don't cover a lot of area and they aren't offered at necessarily convenient times for people. I think if we increase the coverage of public transportation and the hours that it serves, that we'd see more participation in public transportation. But it's a vital service for people who can't drive because they're elderly, or like the person in my neighborhood, they have one car for a 2-adult family, or just, for example, some young families don't want to walk downtown. They might want to just hop a bus. They might not want to take their car everywhere they go. So I think we just need more accessible options for everyone, and that's going to especially attract young people to the area. There was a survey done recently that showed that young people are leaving Wisconsin after college, and one of the reasons was not enough access to public transportation.
Thank you. Candidate Siebers?
Boy, I'm having a hard time with that button. I definitely support public transportation, and I'm going to do a little bit different slant. I think in regards to the issue in terms of climate change, in terms of the carbon print, if we're going to be really, really serious in regards to this issue, I think one of the solutions is that we start using public transportation more. And that includes people like me. It's real easy for me to get in my car and go a mile or whatever in my car, or 2 miles, versus taking a bus. But I think in regards to the issue in terms of our environment, I think I can be a better example, and I can start using public transportation. So I am strongly supportive of public transportation.
Well, and thank you for that segue into our next question, which you will go first on. And that is, have you been studying the climate resiliency recommendations of the League of Women Voters of Appleton and the city's climate task force? And what actions should the city prioritize to deal with these concerns? What are your ideas for ensuring a transition away from fossil fuel, reducing waste going to landfills, center equity and sustainability plans?
Well, my apologies. I have not seen the league's statements. I have started going over the recommendations from the task force on resiliency and climate mitigation and adaptation. Again, I mean, I think the recommendations are the ones that I read and saw are great recommendations. The challenge is when you start putting a dollar sign to it. I like the one thing as simple. I think it's simple. The idea of streetlights not being as bright or dimming when there's no traffic versus when there is traffic, and again, as I said, in regards to the buses, using buses and more walking and more biking. There's a lot of tough decisions that are going to have to be made in regards to the proposals that are being given us.
Thank you. Candidate Baum?
Thank you. So I read over the Climate Mitigation Task Force's report after it was published and actually sent them some of my feedback and ideas on some of the solutions that they brought forth. I think one way that we can reduce just waste in general is if the city looks at both the waste produced and the climate, power impact that city contracts have, like the service providers that we use for the city, have climate impact reports made for developments and work with developers to make sure that they're using green practices when they build and rehab buildings in the city. Also just making Appleton more walkable and increasing public transportation is going to have a big effect on climate change. We have the composting program. I think that we should go forward with that. I've heard that might be not feasible in the future. So there are just little ways that we can ensure that the city is working in effective ways to affect climate change.
Okay. We will start with Candidate Baum on this question and go to Candidate Siebers. So the League is always concerned about access to voting. So early voting in Appleton, of course, is the 2 weeks before the week of the election, which is March 23rd this year. And it is only at the city clerk's office, and there's a few adjustments during regular working hours. Expanding this would take additional funds. Particularly for the large elections, would you favor expanding the amount of time that or hours that early voting is available?
So I do support expanding early voter hours. I think that voting is an essential right to all people in the US, and it's a vital part of being a member of a community. And I think that expanding voting hours is a good idea. I also was very happy to see the expanded number of drop boxes in the last election. I think there are a lot of different ways that we can increase access to voting, and I think that looking at the budget is important and making sure that we're being fiscally responsible in the way that we expand hours. But I also think that there are other avenues we can use, like increased ballot boxes, increased education to make sure people know that they can vote, when they can vote at their ballot place or their polling place, when they can vote in the city clerk's office, what hours the city clerk's office is available for that, when voting starts. So I think that it just is going to take a comprehensive approach to make sure that people have as much access to the ballot as early as possible.
Candidate Siebers?
Yeah, thank you. Boy, I'm going to be really interested to see the pattern of voting after the COVID crisis is behind us. More people now, I believe, are voting absentee ballots versus in person, and I'd be interested in see if that stays the same or if it changes, goes back to voting in person. I think the ballot boxes at the fire stations at City Hall is an excellent idea, and possibly even increasing them. Again, I'm going to be careful. Yes, I think we should look at the hours and the opportunities in regards to voting, but we got to be careful in regards to the cost. So, I mean, we just need to be good stewards of the tax dollars.
Okay, we will start with candidate Siebers for this next question. Will you support obtaining formula block grant funds as lobbied for by the National League of Cities to build back better this year, our infrastructure, workforce, housing, and to reduce gun violence?
Yes, I will do. I think at times I feel that our block grant funds could be utilized more than what they are. So I definitely feel that utilization of block grant funds will be a necessary shot in the arm.
Candidate Baum?
So I also definitely support accepting the block grants that are being proposed. I think that for the community to be able to offer targeted funding, like targeted grants, in a way that's appropriate for the community is vital. And I think that block grants are a great way for communities to make sure that they're injecting funds into the economy and to address real problems in the city.
Okay, we will start with the next question with candidate Baum. How can the city find adequate funding for road repair and infrastructure without borrowing?
So this is something that I think about a lot, in part because I have a Prius, and I know that a lot of the funding comes from taxes, from gas products. And so I think that it's going to just take innovative solutions, and it's going to take looking at a lot of different programs, like possibly wheel taxes. Like I pay extra basically to drive a Prius because I use so little gas every year. I think that one thing that communities are going to have to continue doing, especially now that electric and hybrid vehicles are on the road, is just look at a different way to collect taxes for road and road development.
Okay. Candidate Siebers?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. It was mentioned the wheel tax. The wheel tax is collected and to be used for the repair and of our roads. And so we can only do so much in terms of what is collected. And one thing that I see our city doing more of is, rather than doing asphalt reconstruction, they're doing concrete. And the reason for that is concrete has a longer lifetime than asphalt. So I guess, in our district and District 1, road condition is definitely an issue. We can only do so much in regards to what we have in the coffers with the wheel tax. I don't know any other way in regards to funding additional construction.
Okay. Next question, we'll start with candidate Siebers. Appleton City Council now charges our citizens fees other Wisconsin cities of comparable size do not impose, such as recycling, can purchase of $50, garbage fees, quarterly wheel tax that you mentioned, fire pit, wastewater fee, just to name some. What strategies would you consider to offset costs that were previously covered by property taxes? Here's the balancing act.
Could you ask that question one more time?
I can. There's a lot of stuff in there.
Yes.
The Appleton City Council now charges their citizen fees. Other Wisconsin cities of comparable size do not impose. Recycling can purchase $50, garbage fees quarterly, wheel tax that you mentioned, the fire pit, wastewater fee, just to name some of them. What strategies would you consider to offset the costs that were previously covered by property taxes and that are now fees?
Oh,
I know.
well, our fees are I really don't know. I mean, our fees are extremely important in regards to the funding of services that we render. I don't know of a different way in terms of how we would fund. We can't raise taxes above a certain level because we're capped. I don't have an answer. I apologize.
Candidate Baum, what are your thoughts?
So I think that one thing that's important to remember in Appleton is that we just have a very good quality of life overall. And I think that there's always an emphasis on lowering taxes, but the truth is that in order to provide people in a city with a good quality of life, you have to assess some taxes and fees. I think that it's important to take into consideration that there are going to be people where $50 for a recycling bin is going to be an insurmountable obstacle in some ways. And there are going to be people who just have a hard time making ends meet. And I think that it's important to have some sort of way to offset costs for the people who need it most. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the city has to pay for those people to have like the say recycling bin, because that's what comes biggest in my mind, because actually that's one thing that I was concerned about with the climate task force's proposal was like charging more for bigger garbage cans and things like that. But it could mean partnering with nonprofits or service agencies to make sure that essential services are covered that would have a fee for a family and that they can cover those costs.
Thank you. This next question, we'll start with candidate Baum and go to candidates Siebers. If you wanted to reduce or cut spending by the city, what could you cut and by how much?
So I don't know if this is going to be a popular answer, but I was actually very happy with the budget that Mayor Woodford proposed. I thought that it was a fair and balanced budget. I would actually increase funding to the library project, so I'd actually maybe increase funding. Like I said, I think that Appleton, compared to other places that I have lived, Appleton really provides a good quality of life. And I know that there are people that are struggling, and I know that there are people that get left behind. But I was really happy with the budget. I was afraid that we were going to move towards an austerity budget as a knee-jerk reaction to the economic downturn from the pandemic. So I would not cut anything at this time, and because I can't see future budgets. I can't say what I would cut in the future.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Siebers?
Yeah, I think one of the problems that we have right now is our staff is expected to do more and more with less. We've gotten to the point where we can't even do the less anymore. Running a city costs money. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. And one of the sad things in regards to doing less is that some of the things that we took for granted in the past are no longer happening today as a result. We need to keep looking at ways to be more efficient and effective. But right now, unless we want to start cutting more services, I don't think people want to see that. I would not be in favor of cutting taxes.
Thank you. We'll start with Candidate Siebers for this next question. Will you support more online services for our community, including non-social media communication systems accessible to residents so that they can participate in resolving governmental problems?
I think one of the positive things that is happening now as a result of the COVID is we're doing more and more things online, and I think that's a plus. I'd be interested in seeing what happens after COVID, but I sincerely hope that we continue down this road. I think that's a very, very big plus.
Candidate Baum.
So I think that it's important to increase the public's access to the government and how it works. And I have actually really enjoyed the increase, I guess, of transparency and communications that's occurred since Mayor Woodford took office. I believe they're also posting committee committee or board openings online now, which I think is a really good way to get people just more aware that they can join boards and committees. So I thought that was great. I think that one issue I have as a software person is that I think there's always a knee-jerk reaction to increase online avenues. I think that we need to continue to make sure that we're giving people information in a lot of different mediums. We need to make sure that people that don't necessarily spend all of their time on a computer or a phone also have access to vital city information and the avenues that they have to get involved. So I would like to see communications increase in the city across the board and even more transparency.
Thank you. We'll start with Candidate Baum this time. What would you like to see for District 1 that would increase the quality of life for your residents?
So I think that what I've heard the most is probably two things. One is grocery store access, because we have the Green Gecko on one side of the district. And I think we have a co-op possibly opening on the north side of the district. But it's really hard, especially for people in the middle, to get to grocery stores. And if you want to actually get to a big grocery store, you have to drive to Festival or Pick and Save or Costco. And it just is a burden for people that can't drive, need to rely on public transportation. Also just making the district more walkable. I'd like to see more businesses sort of distributed more evenly into the district, because right now businesses are really on the edges. Like, for example, I walked my bike to Chain Reaction today to get it maintained. It would be nice if there were more businesses within a few blocks of my house that I could just walk to. It's good for exercise, it's good for the neighborhood community. So just making everything more walkable and making sure that we have access to more distributed businesses is what I would say.
Thank you. Candidate Siebers?
The number one issue that I am presented with by the residents of the district is house maintenance and yard maintenance, but mainly house maintenance. Most of the landlords that have property in the district do very well in regards to maintaining their properties. But there are a few that don't do anything, in my opinion, in terms of maintaining their properties. They're just grabbing the money and putting it in their pocket. And, you know, if more and more property owners in this small group would maintain their properties, that would go a long ways in terms of adding to the quality of the neighborhood and of the district. And then another thing, and something that we're going to need to discuss and talk about, is speed. It seems that that's becoming more and more an issue in regards to traffic. More and more people are going down our smaller roads at a faster clip than ever before.
Okay, thank you. Because you two candidates were so to the point, I have a chance to ask you two more questions that I wouldn't normally get to. So we'll have just two more questions, and we'll start with candidate Siebers. What's your biggest priority if elected?
Well, I think the biggest priority, if elected, is to continue doing what I'm doing in regards to, as I was just talking about, the housing stock. You know, it's one thing to complain about a property, but I think it's another thing to, and this is something I've done in the last several years. I recognize people, and this includes landlords, who do an excellent job in regards to maintaining their properties. And definitely I recognize people who improve their properties. Mayor Woodford and I do a certificate of appreciation for those things. So, I mean, that will be my focus. And obviously, the library is another.
Thank you. Candidate Baum?
So my number one priority would be to make sure that everybody in the district feels heard and respected. I have a lot of experience with communications, but also technology. So I think that I'd like, as we mentioned before, like increase different avenues for people to communicate with the city, but also making sure that the services that we use in communication and the policies that we have with communicating are professional and forward thinking, and that when we use like technologies, that we make sure that they have terms of services that best serve the community, and that the technology that we use protects our citizens' privacy. And then the other priority, I think, is really just mitigating climate change. We've already seen 100 years event with flooding in Appleton, and with that big like storm that happened in July of 2019. So we're already behind on where we need to be with the impacts of climate change. And I know that homeowners are worried about their properties, and people that are already underserved are often disproportionately affected by climate change. So that's another big issue for me.
So for our last minute and a half, we will start with candidate Baum and then end with candidate Siebers. And this is your opportunity to look at District 1 voters and to tell them why they should vote for you.
So I think that you should vote for me because I really value everyone, and I am a good listener, and I will listen to constituents and also work to make sure that everyone feels heard and valued, and people don't feel like they're falling behind, or people don't feel like the city is leaving them behind. I know especially with the snow right now, with snow removal, people feel like the plows are behind. I've heard people in the district feel like the police don't necessarily respond to people in the northern Wisconsin area, like Wisconsin Avenue area, as quickly as other areas of the city. Some of this is just going to be education and listening and like having a conversation. Some of this is going to be taking a hard look at what's actually happening at the district. And the other reason I think that I didn't touch on a lot is that I do work in software and I have a good understanding of technology and service contracts and making sure that the negotiations that we get into as a company best serve both our clients and our employees. So I would bring that experience to bear in being on the Common Council. And I just appreciate the time that I could take tonight to let people hear my voice and know how I feel about the issues.
Thank you. Current candidate Siebers.
All right. Well, I want to first start out with saying thank you to the league for hosting this forum. I also want to thank the people who presented the questions. And I want to thank everybody who is watching this. These are challenging times. And, you know, while new ideas and voices are good, I think continuity is needed. And I am so grateful to the voters of District 1 for giving me the experience of serving them as long as they have. And I ask them again for their confidence and their vote.
Okay, thank you. I have a few closing comments to say, so I hope you'll bear with me just a little longer. We have some slides of upcoming events. I want to thank the candidates for their contributions this evening and sharing their information with us. It was very valuable, very interesting. We do have some additional forums coming up, as you can see. And some of you, if you're in District 1, you wouldn't be in Calumet County, but we do have Calumet County Circuit Board Branch 2, which is something new for us. And then we have the other districts coming up. But we do have some recordings already on our, I'll get to those in a bit. Timeline, reminders, online voter registration is open until March 17th. After that, you need to go to your clerk's office or you can register on election day, but you do need to have both proof of residence and an ID at that time. If you need to request an absentee ballot, myvote.wi.gov, it is recommended that you have those mailed or put in the lock boxes by March 23rd. In-person absentee voting starts Monday, March 23rd and goes to April 2nd, but you do need to check your municipality for those exact times because they do adjust them. And then all of these forums are going to be uploaded on our website. And the ones that are already there is the school board from last evening, from March 2nd. And the voter guides will go up typically about a week after the forum because it takes some time for me to questions to them and for them to type out their answers and get them back to me and for me to get it into a format for a voter guide. As we've done for the last couple elections, if you live alone and you need someone to witness your absentee ballot, give the league a call, contact us, because we know what the rules are for doing this in the right way, doing it legally, and we can provide that witness service for you. If you need to check anything, check your registration, check your polling location, you can track your in-person absentee ballot. All of that good stuff is myvote.wi.gov. And for nonpartisan voter information, vote411.org. So I have to thank the candidates again, and thanks to the members of the league who helped make this forum a success. And of course, Jean, our president, Julie, the awesome timekeeper, Barb and Dave, who are the Tech 1 and Tech 2 that you see back there on the screen. Shirley, Brian, and there are others. We all are volunteers, and we do this because voting is important to us and informed voting is important to us. So with that, I wish a good evening to all of you, and we hope you will join us for future forums. Good evening.